everybody. That's right, Rob. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Critters, where we live stream every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, unless we're on location and out of town. Quincy, nice job. I'm trying to prevent a behavior concern from happening right here with Quincy. But welcome, everybody. Good morning. Hey. And happy Memorial Day. My name is Laura Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center. Sorry, we're going to go through a little extinction burst here. Nice job, Rock. My name is Laura Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center where we teach people all over the world how to empower the lives of animals and their people. And we do that through our live streaming services. Sorry, this just started right when the live stream started. You can find out more about the work we do on our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Got some extinction bursts happening here, a little bit of frustration. You can always reach me personally on my email address, laura@theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. I have a feeling it's my energy level and my tone of voice. That's right. What do you think? Nice job. Okay. So yeah, good morning and welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Critters. My behavior of talking loudly is being negatively reinforced. My behavior of talking calmly is being negatively reinforced to escape avoided consequence. Good morning. Oh, there we go. Let me do some alternate behaviors here real quick. Hang on, let me get this off screen. Let me get this off screen. Good morning, everybody. So I decided to have this topic, understanding aggression. This was requested from a couple of people that watch our live stream, along with a couple other topics. I originally had Rocky's commercial scheduled for today, but I got in touch with them this week, and it's not ready, so we're looking into June. June is a filled month for us for Coffee with the Critters. And I wanted to show you, you might want to pay attention to our Facebook page. Under the events, we list the topics of Coffee with the Critters. We've had to make some changes to a couple of them. This one, next week, I believe I'm going to be at Nature's Nurseries Wildlife Festival. So we'll be live streaming from there next week. So pay attention. It won't be at 9 a.m. It's going to be later in the day, and I'll be live streaming out there. I'll be doing some training with some of their education wildlife animals. Don't know who yet, so you might see some raptors. You might see, I just don't know. We'll find out. And if I can live stream some training, I will. Hey, Eva. And then the week after that, I'm going to be on Long Island for the C4AW collaboration for avian wellness. That is going to be action-packed. That's going to be an action-packed weekend. all about avian wellness, 2 days, and we'll be doing Coffee with the Critters from there. And I believe registration for that is ending soon. I believe it's on May 31st. So, and then I know in June we also have, I'll be in Utah. I believe it's the 3rd week of June, so I'll be live streaming from Utah. And yeah, so pay attention to our events page. We'll put everything there. You can also find it on our website. Also, if you'd like, I'm going to be working on the next email newsletter as soon as this morning's Coffee with the Critters is done. So if you want to be on our email newsletter list, we always get compliments that we're very generous with our information. So you can find our email newsletter list here on the Facebook page. So let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to talk about understanding aggression. And I guarantee you this hour is not going to be long enough, but this was requested from several loyal followers. So I thought, let's go ahead and dive deep into it. And I'm going to get as much information as possible. Good morning, Katie. Good morning, Nancy from Key West. So understand, well, first of all, who here has concerns or questions about animals that they're working with that are labeled as aggressive? A lot of the animals that reside or come here for training are labeled as aggressive. I know, gosh, don't let me forget to talk about pigs. Because you want to talk about the number one issue I get contacted for in the pig community is aggression. I'd say in the parrot community, I'm trying to think of the number one behavior why I get contacted. Nice job, Rob. It's either behaviors labeled as aggressive, screaming, plucking and mutilation. Okay, Jen says her, okay, and Susie, me, yep, all right. So behaviors labeled as aggressive in the companion parrot community are pretty high, even in the zoo community, pretty high. And I have a lot of different photos here this morning. I want to talk about, I'm going to start off with what aggressive, when somebody calls me and says, I have an aggressive animal, I will say, I don't know what that means. Tell me in more detail. And there was a conversation I was having last night where an animal was labeled as aggressive. And when we label these animals as aggressive, one of the pitfalls that happens is people think there's nothing they can do about it. All behavior serves a purpose. All behavior serves a purpose for that animal. And I'm going to talk about, tell me what you're looking at when you call behaviors or animals labeled as aggressive. Tell me the behaviors. Go ahead and tell me. What are you seeing? Some of those that I see or I hear about are growling, showing teeth, lunging, biting, striking, reaching for people, whether that's with their mouth, with their beak, with their hands, with their arms, open beaks. Good morning, Jeannie. Pat says, one of the most common labels I see to animals is mean. Drives me crazy. When somebody will tell me if an animal is aggressive or mean, I'm going to ask you, what does that look like? And when you tell me what that looks like, we can uncover some underlying behaviors. And using applied behavior analysis is using environmental events to control behavior. I experiment a lot with animals when I first start to get to know them, understand them. I may go in and start interacting with the animal with one thought in mind, but I'm going to quickly change what I do based on what behaviors that animal shows me. And I don't know what behaviors that animal is going to show me until we get started. So, hey, Kathy. Kathy says biting. Other people are saying lunging and biting. Yeah. Hey, Deb's on here as well. She says, but that's also a very vague and abstract term. Jen says throwing teeth, trying to bite once away from the cage. Okay, some other behaviors that I see. Some other behaviors that I will see that I'm not going to say are aggressive, but these are behaviors I'm paying very close attention to, because if I don't make my next move accurately and correctly, I could reinforce the very behavior I'm trying to change, which could be a lunge, a bite, or a growl, or head swipe. I'm looking for tense body language or tense behavior. What does that look like? Depending on the animal, I'm looking at the animal. Does the animal freeze? And I'm watching muscle movement. I may be watching hands. If, as I walk by, I see the body starting to tense up. Some other things I look for when I'm working with an animal, especially one that's labeled as aggressive. If I can feel that animal, then I'm looking for that tense or jerky reactions. Or even if I'm sitting there working with an animal and I see the animal flinch really fast, I'm like, whoa, stop, back up. Whether it's me or something else in this environment is making this animal nervous. And what does nervous look like? If I'm pairing moving too fast with this animal with my interaction, then I could very well be getting ready to reinforce a behavior I'm trying to change. So some of these behaviors can be very, very subtle. Like I'm looking for, Beth says, eye changes shape. Yep. I'm looking for tail stops wagging, tail gets tense, tail gets rigid. And I'm thinking about pigs in that one. When I'm watching Milo, I'm watching him when I think what I would call comfortable and relaxed, which is out grazing in the greenhouse. If his tail's sitting there wagging and all of a sudden it stops and his chewing stops, I am watching everything in the environment. What is he paying attention to? So something else I look for. Wow, we're getting a lot of comments. Great. Dilating eyes, overexcited, ruffled feathers. I look for, with birds, I'm looking for tight, pulled in feather placement. Like with the dogs and the pig, I'm looking at what's the Rocky, that was pretty good. Rocky just took off flying. Woo-hoo! Hang on. Yeah! Woo! Nice job, Pipsqueak. Nice job. You haven't done that on Coffee with the Critters in a while. You gonna do another somersault? Do a somersault. So what I'm trying to do, what just happened right there, if you can see, hear, smell, or feel, if that animal can see, hear, smell, or feel you, you're training it whether you realize it or not. Rocky just flew across the cage. Yeah! Nice. He usually only flies when something scares him. Go, Rico. Yeah. So this may sound like a lot of screaming. What I'm trying to do is redirect behavior. And now what I have, it sounds loud, but I like it when I hear that. Watch, he responds to it. What do you think, Rock? What do you think? And what is happening is those two are communicating with each other. Nice job. There you go. So some animals will also shake when they're nervous. I see that with a lot of different animals. I'm watching for excessive behaviors. I'm thinking of one animal in particular. I know we got a couple people in here that are in level 2. One primate in particular that would scratch her behind, but that didn't always mean she was nervous. And I tried to identify exactly what it meant through training and playing it with different objects and situations. So she did that out a lot. It was paired with anticipation. It was paired with, I'm not sure what's getting ready to happen. It could be paired with, you're not moving fast enough. And a lot of animals, if you don't move fast enough in your training, in your interaction with them, a lot of times that can lead to frustration. That can lead to frustration, and frustration can lead to things such as a lunge, a grab, a bite. Yeah, so I'm just paying attention to your comments. Something else I look for when I'm interacting with an animal, especially if it has 4 legs, if I'm sitting there interacting with it, I'm watching its behavior. I'm watching where its back legs are. If its back legs are outstretched behind him, I have a picture of this, and it's with Milo, our pig. If I present a new object to them and they're not familiar with it, I'm going to watch their body language, which is behavior. How are the feathers laying? How is the hair on the back of the neck standing up? What do the back legs look like? If those back legs are outstretched, such as in a way to hurry up and be able to back up because it's not sure, those are things I pay attention to. And if I see that, then I back up in what I'm doing. Yeah, sorry about the noise, Beth. So a couple of other things I will look for is if the animal leans back. Because if you don't pay attention to those, like I said, you can actually reinforce the very behavior you're trying to change. I'm looking for if the animal stops moving, if the animal freezes, and something else I've seen is if I'm sitting here interacting with the animal and the animal constantly turns away. That can mean the animal's not comfortable with what you're doing. Good job, Rico. What do you think, Rock? Yeah, Beth says leaning in but ready to flee. Leaning in, this is something else I don't want to see. If I'm interacting with an animal, let's say I ask a behavior, it gives me the behavior, I bridge, and then I go to reinforce. If I go to deliver a food reinforcer. If I go to deliver a food reinforcer and I see that animal hurry up and grab it and back up, that's telling me I'm pushing the animal too far, too fast, and I don't want to see what comes next. I know I'm off to do some more zoo training again this upcoming week. We will be live streaming that in level 2. In our level 2 membership. But here's another thing. If I'm nervous, I stop. Because if I'm nervous, that means I'm not sure what that animal's getting ready to do. And if I'm working with an animal labeled as dangerous, aggressive, whatever, If I'm nervous, I'm not sure what that animal's going to do. And if I'm not sure what that animal's going to do, that animal's probably not sure of what I'm getting ready to do. So we could easily label that animal unpredictable. And when I hear people label animals as unpredictable, I usually try to get to the root of the problem, but I'll just say that's letting me know that that particular animal is being interacted with without consistency and positively reinforcing behaviors we want to see maintain or increase. Beth says taking the food and running. What I want, if I'm using a food reinforcer, I want to see I don't want to see tension. I don't want to see tight feathers. I want to see a tail wagging. I usually want to see the animal look at what I'm asking it to do and looking back up at my face for more information. So I want to see the animal calmly take the food reinforcer and eat it. I don't put myself in positions where I have to be nervous. If I'm nervous, I'm moving too fast. And a lot of times what I'll do, especially with animals with a history of biting, lunging, any type of behavior similar to that, what I will do, and I may approach from a distance or deliver food through a tube at a distance, or I'll approach, deliver reinforcer, back away. So if that animal is afraid of me, and a lot of behaviors labeled as aggressive are out of fear. The animal does not understand. A lot of times what I'll do is very consistently walk up, deliver reinforcer, walk away. So what I'm trying to do is pair myself with that positive reinforcer. So I'm shaping myself being a conditioned reinforcer. I do that with every animal. And if you do that pretty soon, if you're lucky enough to be able to use food as a positive reinforcer, pretty soon you'll see the animal's list of positive reinforcers start to grow. And I am one. The opportunity to be on me, near me, interacting with me becomes a positive reinforcer. Okay, so a lot of times these behaviors, the lunging, the biting, you'll see screaming. Nice job, Rob. Screaming, growling, excessive barking. These can be a lot of out of fear. You heard me say that all behavior serves a purpose. If these behaviors, even the head swiping, the lunging, if these behaviors are happening, they're serving a purpose for the animal. And a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them are fear-based. I see a lot of animals, and I'm not just talking about birds because I work with a lot of different types of exotics. I like working with exotics. I have several of my dog training friends that are fabulous dog trainers, and I can help back up their work by saying, you may be able to use force and coercion with your dog. You're not going to be able to use it with him. And I always plan for the day if and when cage bars may not be between us. So I like to work with a lot of undomestic, and I like to work with a lot of exotic because it really fine-tunes my training. It fine-tunes my approach in applied behavior analysis and my use of positive reinforcement. I love working with special needs because I love seeing those animals empowered, and I love working with special needs because it helps me fine-tune my approach, because if that animal cannot see you or cannot hear you, how are you going to put behaviors on cue? It helps me explore antecedent behavior consequence outside of the norm. I love working with exotics because a lot of times there's very little room for error. So I may go in with a particular plan in mind, and I'm going to have to change that very quickly. And if I'm not sure, I'm not going to stand in front of the animal and keep asking the same behavior. If I'm not sure, I'm either going to end the training session and walk away, or I am going to ask another behavior from the animal that the animal already knows how to do, that I can deliver positive reinforcement and walk away. Otherwise, I'm pairing my training sessions with an aversive, something the animal doesn't like. Nancy says, does head swiping apply to parrots? I know the term head swiping is very common in pigs, where they take their head and they just wham, they swipe. And kind of, if they have tusks, they're starting to use them. As far as parrots, head swiping, I see parrots do a lot of different behaviors. Like I see, here's my branch. I see macaws a lot will take their beak and go like this. I see that with Amazons as well. So I guess, Nancy, I'd have to see more. I'd have to know more. Adrian says, I have a couple cockatoos that will swing at me if I'm being pushy. Swing, you meaning lunge towards you? I don't know. I'm just asking. I need more specific details. So a lot of times we can reinforce behaviors labeled as aggression when a lot of fear-based, the animal just doesn't understand what you're asking. And when I see a lot of this lunging, biting, head swiping, I see an animal not understanding and or overstimulated. I see these behaviors a lot with an animal that's just over aroused, over threshold. You're not going to be able to get his attention back. They're pushed too far. Yeah, in several different animals. Like I said, a lot of the animals that I work with are a lot of exotics, so they're in enclosures. When I'm approaching an animal in an enclosure, I don't care if that enclosure is 10,000 square feet or that enclosure is a crate. I am being very cautious. Usually if that animal is in a crate and on the ground, I'm approaching it. I'm above the animal. So I'm always paying attention. A lot of times I will lower myself because if I'm being approached and I'm in a crate and something's towering over me, especially if I'm a prey animal, I'm going to be defensive. I'm going to defend myself. There are cage bars around me, so that means my choices are limited. My choices and opportunity to escape are now restricted. So I'm careful how I approach. Bigger isn't always better. A lot of people want huge enclosures. If an animal is not used to a large space, putting it in a large space can be very overstimulating and a very fearful environment. Okay? So it's all based on the individual. Julie says, hey, Julie, Laura, why are they territorial about the cage? What animal are you talking about? Any animal? And I'm just getting ready to talk about this. I was just talking to Jeannie Gilligan last night about a particular animal. One of the first things I asked was, does this animal, and this is an animal that's considered very dangerous. I said, does this animal get out of the cage? No. So that helped us. We went back and forth collecting information. A lot of animals that do not get out of their cage become cage bound. And being taken out of the cage can be a very scary situation. I find animals I know, Quincy, me too. I find animals that are cage bound. There's a lot of frustration with Rocky this morning. I'm trying to identify what. When animals are cage bound, they're in stagnant environment. Coming out of the cage can be a very stressful situation for them. The more they are cage bound, a lot of times the more I see the biting, lunging, and protective behaviors start to increase the closer you get to the cage. We'll have it here. So Beth says horses, Mustangs that are restrained in a round pen, vast arena space is too much at the beginning of the training. Okay. And a lot of times, what I do, if my plan is to get that animal out of the enclosure, I am training everything I need to do inside the enclosure that's going to help me get it back in its enclosure. So when I'm working with cage-bound animals, my intention is to get them out. We've done it here several different, when the porcupine was here. I'd never worked with the porcupine before. Those are some of my best teachers. I need to know, what does this behavior mean? I wanted to get the porcupine out of the enclosure, but before I even did that, I needed to train it certain things inside the enclosure that were going to help me get it back in once I got it out. Okay, getting a lot of comments. And a lot of these I will go back once Coffee with the Critters is over and respond to a lot, but I want to bring some of your comments into here. So when we don't know and we don't know how to do better, a lot of times what happens with animals that are labeled as aggressive is they stop getting interacted with and they stop getting out of the cage because they think that's just how they are. They're not going to be able to change it. Our center here is full of animals that were once labeled as aggressive and unadoptable. And one was Rocky. He was going to be put down. It was just recently in a commercial surrounded by hundreds of people. I have some photos coming up for you too of me training several different animals and where I start with some of these animals that are labeled as aggressive. So we have different examples of cage aggressive. That can be birds. Those can be so many different animal primates. I've seen a lot of primates cage aggressive, meaning they lunge, grab, bite when you get near their enclosure. And my intention is to get these animals out and get them back in, to be able to empower them. Margaret says, just like you are territorial about your house, if a burglar comes in and an animal finds security, I don't understand what this means. So you can teach them to understand through training. Training sessions can be very short, but very frequent. I'm going to start showing you some photos. Another example I have as cage aggressive here is that I see a lot is with dogs. So where's their cage? The house can be their cage. They're fine and calm and comfortable in the house unless somebody else comes in, or when you take that dog outside of the house, it starts barking excessively, barking at people, barking at neighbors. That, when I see that, that is an animal that is probably overstimulated and does not understand. So the people they stop taking the dog out. And a lot of times I see this with all kinds of animals. The people think that the animal is no longer safe to be around people, so they stop taking the animal out. And when that happens, behavior issues usually skyrocket. And you're lucky if they don't turn into self-injurious behaviors such as stress and breaking teeth, feather destructive behaviors, self-injurious behaviors such as mutilation. I see that quite a bit. So, yeah. And then behaviors get worse. The behaviors aren't even addressed. They're stopped being interacted with. When I see an animal that is constantly put into a position where it has to defend itself, that happens a lot with animals in enclosures, whether those enclosures are this size, smaller size, your house, the backyard. Living in constant states of fear can exacerbate behaviors we're trying to change and the actual toll it takes on the health of the individual animal. I see, and I talked a lot about this in my two-day presentation I gave in Montreal to a bunch of different trainers, but I was focusing on exotics. A lot of exotic animals are, and companion animals are in elevated levels of consistent stress. And Robert Sapolsky, I can't remember who turned me on to his studies. I think it was brought up in our level 2 membership program, where we were talking about consistent states of stress. Robert Sapolsky, he did much of his past 30 years of work is working with baboons and watching how they live in a constant state of stress. This one particular group of baboons, not all, that was fabulous to listen to. And the havoc it can wreak on the social structure of the animal and that animal's community and its overall health. Beth says common manifestation of environmental stress is ulcers. Yeah, and way beyond that too, Beth. Way beyond that. It takes its toll on your brain, your memory, your heart, your blood pressure. So ever since I started listening to these studies, when I find myself in elevated levels of stress, I find a way to get rid of it. Because I can't do better for my animals if my health is now taking a hit. Right, Rob? Yeah. So even we can cue stressors by certain sounds that we make, different movements that we make on a consistent level. That can get the animal, start preparing the animal to be tense. I see that a lot, especially in larger organizations. And when we're working with animals with behaviors labeled as aggressive, something very common I see is assumptions, assuming that the animal knows what's getting ready to happen. When you assume with an animal, especially one labeled as aggressive, you're going to put yourself in harm's way. I never assume that the animal knows what I'm getting ready to do. I am paying attention to behaviors. In applied behavior analysis, we focus on observable, measurable behavior. I never assume what I know what's going through that animal's mind, because a lot of times I'm going to be wrong. And a lot of times if I'm wrong, I'm putting myself in a very dangerous situation. So I'm watching, are the behaviors that I'm wanting to see change, are they maintaining or increasing? Good. If I see the behaviors I want to see changed, if I see the undesired behaviors not changing, okay, different approach. Don't ever assume an animal knows. I didn't freeze. Never assume the animal knows what you're doing or what you're getting ready to do. When you assume, you're putting yourself in a very dangerous situation. That's why in the field of the work that I do, anthropomorphism can get you killed, can get you hurt. Anthropomorphism, putting human characteristics and feelings on non-human animal behavior. I'm not going to assume, and I'm going to try my hardest not to anthropomorphize, because that's when I start in this whirlwind of behaviors not going the way that they need to be for that animal's health. So I want to show some photos. We've got a couple different behaviors. Let's see. There's some animals I've worked with that I've been very afraid of. And when I'm afraid of them, I just put myself in a position where I'm not afraid of them. And a lot of times that is behind cage bars, off contact. I am not touching the animal, excuse me. And in case I make a mistake, I can't get hurt or that animal can't get hurt. So many times I see people taking too big of steps and putting themselves in very dangerous situations. And like a lot of times people say, I'm nervous. Then stop, back up and walk away. Because you may get ready to get hurt. You're gonna, the likelihood of you reinforcing what you're trying to change is getting ready to happen. And when we're pushing our animals too far once in a while, we become unpredictable to the animal. And then we call the animal unpredictable because we don't understand. The animal is behaving the way it is because they don't understand. When I'm approaching an animal, the key here is consistency. Get help, okay? Trying to figure this out by yourself, if you do not understand, that animal is likely to lose its home. That animal is likely to be stuck in a cage. Reach out and ask for help. It's worth it, okay? Make sure you're reaching out to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Because if you don't, like I said, it's you and the animal that pays for it in the long run. Yeah. So even my dogs are still dogs, okay? I love to love and cuddle and kiss on a lot of different animals. That loving, cuddling, and kissing can be a stressor for that animal. I am not going to hug an animal that doesn't appreciate being hugged. I see a lot of accidents happen there, and I don't know why it bit me. I was feeding it. I don't know why it bit me. It knows I love it. When I hear things like that, I'm like, ooh, this is a dangerous situation. Because birds, well, be specific. Parrots are parrots. Dogs are dogs. Not every animal is the perfect match for a certain situation. Sometimes we have to go in and change what we're thinking about doing. So this animal here, I started off contact, distance, because proximity was a reinforcer for a lunge, a grunt, the eye flashing, okay? The very behaviors I'm trying to change, all right? Another animal, you're gonna see me next month going out to get sunshine out at Best Friends in Utah. This is a bird that is not currently handleable, will bite, what I'm told, bite flesh as soon as he sees it. I'm going out to pick up Sunshine, and I'm going to be live streaming my training with Sunshine. This is an animal I am not sure what to expect, so I'm going to start training it. And the training's going to start as soon as I stick him in that crate and drive across country and head home, or head back here to the center. You're going to see with Sunshine, my approach. You're going to see my mistakes. You're going to see me correcting my mistakes. You're going to see me identify positive reinforcers. You're going to see me create motivation. I'm going to try my hardest to get those feathers growing back in, but depending on how long they've been plucked, it may be possible, it may be not. You're going to see me shape the behavior of him learning how to forage. I don't know if he's flighted or not, if he can fly. If he can fly, I'm going to keep him flighted. My intention is to get Sunshine out of the cage, recall trained, not biting, other desired behaviors instead, and hopefully adopted out. I don't need any more foster failures here. So we're going to be live streaming every step of the way with Sunshine in the Parrot Project, every single step of the way. I'm going to show people where to start. Some other photos I wanted to show you. I want to stay on track too. With this animal, I started off contact, identifying reinforcers, being consistent, okay? Starting where I'm comfortable, starting where he's comfortable, all right? I've done so much work with this animal that I ended up going from being very afraid of him to caring so much for him that I want to see him so empowered. When I stopped training him, I was training a nail trim, okay? I was training him to put his hands through the cage bars while I was sitting there trimming his nails. So now we're having physical contact, but it's protective contact. Heard some foraging happening behind me, but it's protective contact. So I'll move from off contact, so there's no chance of getting hurt, to once I better understand the animal and the animal understands me, then a lot of times I'll move to protective contact. So there is contact, but it's through cage bars. Let's see. The longer the history of reinforcement, meaning the longer the animal has been doing the growling, the lunging, the biting, the swiping, the head swiping, that's called history of reinforcement. The longer the history of reinforcement, in my experience, the longer that history of reinforcement, the longer it takes you to change. But in my experience, it doesn't take near as long to change as what it did for the animal to learn how to do it in the first place. All these undesired behaviors, oh, that is so pretty, have been shaped knowingly or unknowingly. Great. Susie says, watching and learning along with Sunshine is going to be very helpful. Yes. I sure hope so. That's my intention. My intentions are numerous. My intentions are to continue working with best friends. My intentions are to help them. My intentions are to get tickle, wickle, wickle, to get Sunshine adopted. And my intentions are to teach people where to begin. So we talked about history of reinforcement. So where do we start? I'm going to show you some places where I began. We can reinforce behaviors labeled as aggressive by using force. I will not use force. By limiting their choices. I wrote all this stuff down. By being inconsistent. I have to be consistent, and everybody interacting with that animal has to be consistent. I've worked with several wildlife rehabilitation centers, several rescues, several zoos, doing group training. Not every person has the time to do the training. So I show them how to set it up to make it easy for everybody. Yeah, and not everybody has the same role. If I'm doing consistent training and then a daykeeper comes in not knowing what they're doing, they can reinforce the very undesired behavior I'm trying to train. They're keeping the undesired behavior on an intermittent schedule of reinforcement, meaning the undesired behavior is reinforced once in a while, which can keep that undesired behavior very strong. So everybody needs to be consistent, but I know rescues, wildlife centers, and zoos don't always have the time to do the training. I know. I have the same situation here, but there's things I do to make it very easy to continue to do your daily chores, your daily requirements, and incorporate the training, because you're training whether you realize it or not. So we can reinforce behaviors labeled as aggressive by constantly putting them in states where they have to defend themselves, by assumption, them not understanding and pushing past their comfort level. So what do we do? Yes, so Storm says, unfortunately, that's very common, and then their children repeat the parents' behavior. Yeah, and we're working on this in level 1 with a couple of different people in our level 1 online learning. We're working with 2 reactive dogs. We're getting ready to work with a blind dog. I'll start incorporating some more of the pig training in the level 1 as well. I know I do some parrot training in there as well, but everybody has to be on the same, everybody has to understand. They don't have to have the same role, but they need to understand the basic laws of behavior in order to get behavior to change. Like I said, all behavior serves a purpose, all behavior. Yes, so what do we do? Okay. When I'm working with an animal that has a history of reinforcement as lunging, and Nancy, maybe we talk about that because she says it's a challenge for her to have to do training. If I'm working with animals with this type of history of reinforcement, I'm going to start off contact, and I'm going to start basically off contact, and you can do off contact in numerous different ways. I will devise a plan around that individual animal. You can do off-contact training through target training. If your proximity to that animal is a reinforcer for it to lunge or bite, you're pushing the animal past its comfort level, back up to where the animal's comfortable, increase that distance, reinforce calm behaviors. Consistently reinforce calm behaviors, whether that's verbally, just through eye contact, food, and I can increase distance. In level 2, we were showing me working with a primate with a PVC pipe, so I could deliver a reinforcer without having to touch, and then pretty soon the opportunity just to engage with me became the reinforcer because I could not touch this animal. And then I found out in the end, when our training was over, that you saw me struggle in this live stream, and this was in level 2. I was like, I'm getting behavior I need to reinforce it, but I can't identify a reinforcer. All the favored food reinforcers are not working because this monkey was not accepting it. So then I started handing it different objects in that opportunity just to engage with me. I would hand the monkey an object, the monkey would hand it back to me. That became the reinforcer. And I identified that through experimenting. Beth says, if I had a nickel for every time I heard we have done everything, I wouldn't have to work. I know. I hear it too. We've done everything. And usually when a person keeps interrupting me and says, we've already tried that. We've already tried that. I know they are shutting me off and tuning me out. They are no longer interested in trying to change this behavior. They're at the end of their rope. They want to be done with the animal. So then I use applied behavior analysis on them and find an alternate way to start that communication back up. And it's usually through doing some real quick training with the animal right there. And I need to make it easy to see, easy to understand for the person. So the person now has the knowledge with the tools, which is the knowledge to continue to do better. That's why in our projects, in our membership programs, I've turned them in. They are 1 year long because people are going to have questions, and I am there to constantly keep you going. I know last night in level 1, we just had somebody sign up, and this morning she sent me a message and said, wow, there's a ton of information in here. So with animals labeled as aggressive, I will start with a lot of times target training, and usually with something at a long distance, so it creates that space between the two of us because the animal is not comfortable with me in close proximity. So I can begin recall, and if you are in the memberships level 1 or level 2, listen to your podcast. There are 2 in there on target training, and I go through all these detailed steps. I explain it, and I create the podcast so they're easy for you to learn while you're cleaning cages so you can just listen. I talk about how to teach recall with a target. So I'm going to start targeting, asking the target from here to here. And a lot of times, if as I get closer, I can turn that target into touch your nose to my hand. I can turn it into just come over here and touch over here. And once you get so close, I'm going to deliver the reinforcer and remove my hand because we are not there yet. That proximity and physical touch could actually reinforce a bite or a lunge. Let's see. Learn to understand the behavior and learn to read the body language, and we do that through training. Here I just impromptu started target training a rabbit. The rabbit was there. I was waiting on somebody, so I was like, I'm just going to train this rabbit. So I started the target training, and I was careful in delivery of my food reinforcer because I haven't trained a lot of rabbits. So I would set the food reinforcer on the ground until I better understood the animal and got a better read on the behaviors. And I did through target training. Let's see, what else do we have? Teaching a station. Not everybody here has alligators. I get that. But pay attention to the behavior. These animals, I'm working protective contact training, and I started teaching them to go to their stations. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's 3 alligators in the water, and I'm teaching them to target and station. I want their front 2 feet. What is this all of a sudden? I want their front 2 feet on the edge of the water. Don't come out of the water, stay in the water. So I'm targeting their feet. Why? Because this is my comfort distance. I want you to stay there. When you stay in the water, food reinforcers are delivered. When you come out of the water, food reinforcers stop. So the animal will go back to the behaviors that have a history of earning positive reinforcement. So then this is how I created a station. And then we started moving towards target training. So if I'm not comfortable, I put myself in a position where I am comfortable. So here I wanted to talk about crate training. Crate training can be, depending on your approach, you can be putting animals in a very vulnerable position. So when I'm beginning crate training, that door is open. You know who has control of that door? That animal. Because once I shut that door, I'm limiting choices, but I shape the behavior of them staying calm while I shut the door. Oops. Hang on. Where I'm looking for 2 particular photos hang on. I'm looking for 2 particular photos of animal I started with off contact that moved to protective contact, and they're not in here. So it was with Coco, the umbrella cockatoo we brought here from the zoo. A lot of people here, they're not comfortable when Coco's out. And if they're not comfortable, it means they don't understand. If they don't understand, Coco doesn't understand, and that can reinforce a lunge. A lot of people here have said Coco is a very dangerous animal. He scares me. And the 2 pictures I have that didn't pull into this live stream were the picture of me showing me training Coco through the cage bars, off contact and protective contact. And the next photo is Coco is one of the most loving animals we have here. What does loving mean? He wants to be touched. So I am now no longer using a head target to touch him. It's now physical contact, but I have a picture of him like leaning into my hand. There's no cage bars. He's out here in the open, and I can use that physical touch as a positive reinforcer. So it is coming up on the hour. I'm going to go back and look through a lot. There's a lot of comments, a very active one. If you guys are interested in this continual work we do, we have our level 1 online learning membership. Level 1 is for understanding behavior. It's more for people in the companion that have companion animals. That want to understand why their animals at home are doing this. Okay, it's heavy with podcasts, live streams, monthly Q&As, group activities. Level 2 is more for people that are to want to learn more. Every week we're doing a live stream. We also talk about a lot of different things. We have guests in there loaded with podcasts. Zoo training happens in there. I train a lot of unfamiliar animals so people see where I begin. Okay, then we also have our projects, the Deaf Dog Project, Parrot Project, Pig Project, Snow Project. These are species specific where people want to learn more about this particular animal. The Parrot Project is skyrocketing, and we're doing fabulous things in there. Weekly live streams, monthly Q&As. People can consult with me if you are a member. Or in one of the pop projects. Then I will do an online live consultation with you because I have you for the rest of the year, because you're going to need continual ongoing guidance, and that's where I give that to you. People show their videos, and I show this should be your next step. Let's see. This October, Dr. Deb Jones and I are having our second all species animal training and behavior workshop, so pay attention for that. Hopefully I see many of you in 2 weeks in Long Island at the C4AW event, and that's that. Happy Memorial Day. I'll go back and respond to all your questions. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and thanks for joining me. I'll see you next weekend on location at the Wildlife Festival. All right, take care, guys.